Hey everybody, and welcome back to another deep dive with us. So today we're going to be looking at something pretty interesting.
Yeah, this should be fun.
Yeah. Basically, we're going to be going over the top 21 most frequently used words in the English language.
Yeah, and it's really amazing how such a small set of words can make up like the foundation for like daily conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And, whether you're a beginner or, you consider yourself more advanced, understanding these words and how to use them effectively, is really going to help you sound more fluent, more natural. So joining me today to, help us unpack all of this and really give us some good insights is...
Hi, everyone.
So I'm really excited to jump into this with you. So I guess to start off, our source has broken down these 21 words into different categories.
Right.
So we've got verbs and we've got conversational words and we've got nouns and adjectives. So I figure, why don't we just go in order? Verbs, those are like the action words, right? The workhorses of the sentence. So let's start there.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So the first one on the list is go. And, I think most people, when they think about go, they're thinking, it's about like physical movement.
Right. Like I go to the store.
Right. Exactly.
But, it can also indicate like a change of state. Like the lights went out or even like a progression of time, like as the years go by.
That's so true. I never really thought about like all the different ways that we use that one little word, go. All right. What about get? That one seems even more, multifaceted.
Yeah, get is a very interesting one, because it often implies a process or a change of state that's sort of outside of your direct control.
Oh, okay.
So you think about phrases like get sick or get lost. It's like something is happening to you. It's not like you're directly making it happen.
Right. It's like something's being done to you.
Exactly.
But then on the other hand, you have phrases like get rich or get ahead.
Right.
And those have a very different connotation.
Yeah.
Right. It's much more like intentional, almost aspirational.
Yeah, it's like get reflects our relationship with change itself, whether it's something we're actively pursuing or something that's kind of being imposed upon us.
That's so interesting. I like that a lot. Okay, so moving right along. Next up, we have do. And this one always feels to me like the ultimate multitasker.
Definitely.
You can do so many things.
Absolutely. It's amazing how often do just pops up in our sentences. From describing our jobs, like, what do you do?
Right.
To expressing obligations, I have to do my homework. It really is like the Swiss Army knife of verbs.
Yeah, and it plays such a key role in questions too. Do you like pizza? Did you see that movie? Like it's just, it makes the question a question.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've had go, we've had get, we've had do. What about have?
Oh, have. That's another one that's surprisingly versatile.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we use it for possession. I have a car.
Right.
But we also use it for experiences. I had a great time. And then, all those idioms too. Have a nice day. Have a good one. These are just ingrained into our everyday conversations.
Yeah, and I think have really highlights how so much of language is really about more than just, the literal meaning. It's about, creating a feeling or, connecting with someone on a social level.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's tackle make. I feel like this is one I use constantly. Make dinner, make a decision, make a mistake. It's all about like creating something or causing something to happen.
Yes.
But then there's also this element of obligation sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Like I made him apologize.
Exactly. Make implies that you're kind of bringing something into being. You're causing something to happen. And you're right about the obligation aspect too. It can be used to express, influence or even a sense of like responsibility for something.
Well, like you're the driving force behind whatever is happening.
Exactly.
Okay. And last but not least on our list of verbs, we have take.
Take. Now, this is an interesting one because take often involves a sense of action combined with possession or control. So, think about phrases like take a break, take a seat, take charge.
Right. It's like you're asserting yourself in some way, whether you're taking something for yourself or taking control of a situation.
Exactly.
So, okay, we've got go get, do, have, make, and take. That is a lot of verbal power packed into 6 little words.
It really is. It's amazing how much we can express with just the small set of verbs.
Okay, so we've covered the verbs. Now let's move on to those little words that I like to think of as kind of like the glue that holds our conversations together. Those little conversational connectors?
Right.
So things like hi and bye and thanks and sorry. I mean, how deep can we really go with these?
You might be surprised. Even these seemingly simple expressions play a really vital role in how we interact with each other.
Okay.
For example, hi and hello, they're not just greetings. They signal that you're open to communication and connection.
Oh, so it's like setting the tone right from the start, like you're extending an invitation
Yeah.
to engage in a conversation.
Exactly.
Okay, and then on the flip side, we have bye.
Right, which signals, closure. It marks the end of the conversation, and, it allows us to transition smoothly out of the interaction.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've covered greeting and departing. But what about those little words that add a touch of, politeness and gratitude to our interactions?
You mean thanks and sorry?
Exactly.
Ah, yes. Those are powerful tools. They help us maintain social harmony, and they help us, navigate those little bumps in the road of human interaction.
Yeah. Thanks acknowledges a favor, right, or a kind gesture, and it, reinforces those positive interactions that we have. And sorry is all about taking responsibility for something, smoothing over those mistakes and showing empathy.
Exactly. They're subtle, but they're really essential for building good relationships.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how we often, modify these words for emphasis, like saying thanks a lot. It carries a lot more weight than a simple thanks.
Oh, definitely.
Or I'm so sorry versus just sorry. It adds that extra layer of sincerity.
Exactly. These little nuances can make a big difference.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've explored 6 key verbs and 4 of these essential conversational words.
We have.
Are you starting to see the power of these seemingly simple words?
Oh, absolutely.
It's like we're peeling back the layers and discovering all this hidden depth to language.
I agree.
All right, so I think we're ready to tackle our next category, which is nouns. So where do we even begin with this?
Well, our source has chosen a handful of nouns that represent fundamental concepts, the building blocks of how we understand the world.
Okay.
So let's start with time.
Okay, time.
Such a basic concept, yet it governs so much of our lives.
Right. We're constantly thinking of time. What time is it? Do we have enough time? It's like this invisible force shaping our days.
Right. And the source actually delves into some pretty deep questions about time.
Oh, really?
Like, how do different cultures perceive time? What's the relationship between time and memory? It's fascinating stuff.
Okay, now I'm intrigued. All right, so alongside time, we have day, which seems, very ordinary. But, it really does mark the rhythm of our lives. Have a good day. It's a brand new day.
Right. And day can also refer to a specific period in history, like back in the day or the day the music died. It connects us to this flow of time, both personal and historical.
Wow, I like that. Okay, what's next?
Next up is thing, which I have to admit always makes me chuckle a little bit.
Why is that?
Well, it's like the ultimate catch-all word, for when our vocabulary fails us.
Oh, yeah. It's like the ultimate placeholder. What's that thing over there? The thing is. But, it's actually really effective at conveying meaning, even when we can't come up with, a more specific word.
Right. It shows that communication isn't always about, perfect grammar or an extensive vocabulary. It's about getting your message across. And sometimes thing does the job perfectly.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so speaking of conveying meaning, we've got place next on our list. It seems like a pretty straightforward word, but I'm sure there's more to it than meets the eye.
There is. Place isn't just about physical location. It can also refer to a position in a sequence, like take your place in line, or even a state of mind, like feeling out of place. It's a word that helps us navigate the world in all sorts of ways.
Right. It's like place isn't just about where we are physically, but also about how we fit in.
Exactly.
And how we make sense of our surroundings.
Exactly.
Okay. And then finally we have people, which, it's it seems so obvious, but, when you think about it, people are really what makes the world go round, right?
That's true.
People represents our shared humanity.
Right.
That's the foundation of society and relationships and, everything that makes us human.
It's the word that reminds us we're not alone.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we've explored verbs, conversational connectors, and now nouns. I'm already feeling like I have a whole new appreciation for the power of these everyday words. But before we jump into adjectives, I'm curious, what's standing out to you so far?
Honestly, I think what struck me the most is how much depth and nuance there is, even in the simplest words. We use them all the time, but we don't often stop and think about how they work.
Yeah. It's like we're taking them for granted.
Totally.
But I think this deep dive is really helping us to, kind of slow down and appreciate the intricacies of these words that we usually just take for granted.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So adjectives, I think we're ready.
Let's do it. You know, it's funny how we can go through like our whole lives using these words and never really stop to think about them.
Right. It's true. But that's, I think, what makes this deep dive so interesting.
Yeah.
It's like we're forced to slow down and actually like appreciate these things that we usually just, take for granted.
Yeah.
So last we left off, we were about to delve into the world of adjectives. So are you ready to add some color to our conversation?
Absolutely. Adjectives are what bring our language to life.
Yeah, they do.
They paint pictures in our minds, they evoke emotions, and they help us make sense of the world.
I love that. So true. And they add, that extra layer of detail that just makes our communication so much richer. Okay, so why don't we start with good? I feel like that's like the most basic adjective in the English language.
It really is. Good is our go-to word for expressing approval or satisfaction or, just like the absence of anything negative.
Right.
It's a wonderfully versatile word.
It is.
You can use it for pretty much anything.
I've noticed that good is often used as kind of a conversational placeholder, especially when we're trying to be polite. Or avoid being too critical. Like, oh, that's a good point. Even if you don't really agree with what the person is saying.
Right. It's like a way of maintaining harmony.
Yeah.
Smoothing over those potential disagreements or awkward moments.
Right. Okay, so good is all about positivity and agreeableness. What about new? What kind of energy does new bring?
New is all about excitement, possibility, a sense of change. It draws our attention to something fresh, something that stands out from the ordinary.
Right.
Think about like getting a new phone or starting a new job.
Right.
There's that element of curiosity and intrigue.
There is. It makes you want to learn more to explore. And it can also be a really powerful marketing tool.
Right.
New and improved, the latest and greatest.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's like designed to pique our interest.
Absolutely. New really taps into that human desire for novelty and fascination with progress.
Yeah. But then on the other hand, new can also highlight a lack of experience.
That's true.
Like new to the job or a new driver.
Right.
It implies a learning curve.
Definitely.
So it's like a double-edged sword.
Right.
Right. It can be exhilarating,
right,
but it can also be intimidating.
Depending on the context.
Exactly. Okay, so we've covered good and new. Ready to wrap things up with happy.
Let's do it. Happy is such a fundamental human emotion.
It is.
It resonates across cultures. It's the language of joy and contentment and well-being.
Yeah, and it's amazing how contagious happiness can be. Like when someone greets you with a genuine smile and I say good morning, it can like brighten your whole day.
It's true. It's like this ripple effect.
Yeah.
Spreading positivity.
And happy isn't just about those fleeting moments of joy either.
Right.
It's about, that deeper sense of fulfillment.
Yeah, that sense of purpose.
Yeah. I think that's what makes happy such a powerful word. It encompasses such a, wide spectrum of positive emotions.
I agree.
Okay, so we've tackled adjectives, but I want to circle back to something you said earlier about how adjectives can paint pictures in our minds and evoke emotions. Do you think there's a connection between these simple adjectives and how we experience the world?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think the answer is yes. The words we use shape how we see things. They provide the framework for how we understand and interpret our experiences.
So, for example, if we're constantly using negative adjectives to describe ourselves or the world around us, we might actually start to see things more negatively.
Exactly. The language we use becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Wow.
It influences our thoughts, our emotions, and ultimately our actions.
That's a powerful reminder to be mindful of the words we choose.
It is.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. Verbs, conversational connectors, nouns, adjectives.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much we can learn from just 21 words.
It really is.
And we haven't even touched on phrasal verbs yet.
Oh, yes.
So those are next on our list. And I think you'll be surprised by how much they add to the richness and complexity of the language.
I think so too.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Bring on the phrasal verbs. All right, so welcome back to the deep dive. We've already covered so much.
Yeah.
But before the break, you mentioned phrasal verbs. What are those exactly and why are they so important?
So phrasal verbs are basically like these combinations of a verb and another word, usually like a preposition or an adverb. And when you put them together, they create a totally new meaning.
Okay, so give me an example.
Okay, so let's take the verb look. Pretty straightforward word, right? But when you start adding prepositions like up after or into, you get phrasal verbs with completely different meanings. So like look up means to search for information.
Right.
Look after means to take care of someone. And look into means to investigate something.
Wow, you're right.
So you see how just a little tweak can make our language so much more expressive.
Yeah, absolutely. So are phrasal verbs just about like adding more words to our vocabulary?
It's more than just adding words. It's about nuance. It's about idiom. Phrasal verbs capture these subtle shades of meaning that would be really hard to express otherwise.
Oh, yeah.
And they make your English sound much more natural, more like a native speaker.
So if they're so nuanced, how do we even begin to learn all of them?
Well, the good news is you don't have to learn every single phrasal verb out there.
Yeah.
Just focus on the most common ones, the ones that come up a lot in everyday conversations.
Okay, that makes sense.
And pay attention to the context, because phrasal verbs can have different meanings depending on the situation.
Right.
So try to learn them in real life examples, not just from lists.
So instead of just memorizing look up, I should try to remember it in a sentence. I need to look at the meaning of this word.
Exactly. Because then you're associating the phrasal verb with a specific meaning and a specific usage.
That's really helpful.
And most importantly, don't be afraid to experiment.
Okay.
The best way to learn phrasal verbs is to actually use them. Start incorporating them into your conversations, even if you're not 100% sure you're using them correctly.
So what if I make a mistake?
Making mistakes is part of the learning process. Even native speakers make mistakes with phrasal verbs all the time.
Okay, that makes me feel a little better.
So don't worry too much about it. Just practice and you'll get more comfortable over time.
So we've covered a lot of ground today. We talked about verbs, conversational connectors, nouns, adjectives, and now phrasal verbs. It's pretty amazing how much we can learn from just 21 words.
It really is. I think it just goes to show the power of language.
Yeah.
And how these simple building blocks can be used to express so many different things.
So what's the main takeaway you hope listeners will, walk away with from this deep dive?
I think the most important thing to remember is that fluency isn't about memorizing a huge vocabulary or mastering all the grammar rules. It's about understanding the basic principles of how language works, and then using those principles to communicate effectively.
So it's not about quantity, it's about quality.
Exactly. By focusing on these 21 words, you're not just learning vocabulary, you're gaining a deeper understanding of how English works.
I love that.
Yeah.
So is there anything you'd like to challenge our listeners to do after this deep dive?
I would challenge them to really pay attention to how these 21 words are being used all around them. Listen to conversations, read books and articles, and see if you can notice how these words are like the threads that hold everything together.
I like that. It's like a treasure hunt.
It is.
And the more you find, the better you'll become at understanding and speaking the language.
Exactly.
Well, this has been such an eye-opening deep dive for me. I feel like I've learned so much.
Me too.
And I definitely have a new appreciation for these words that we use every day. So thank you so much for joining me on this journey. And thanks to all of you for listening. We'll see you next time for another deep dive. All right, so you're looking to really master English quickly and effectively.
Right.
So let's dive into this.
Okay.
The secret sauce revealed in your sources.
Sure.
It's mastering the 4 key language skills. Listening, speaking, reading, and writing.
Okay.
We'll unpack each of those skills.
Yeah.
Sprinkle in some practical tips.
Right.
Some relatable examples, and we'll basically create your roadmap to fluency.
It's interesting because those 4 skills aren't just for English.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're the foundation of any language.
Interesting.
You soak up language through listening, you communicate through speaking, you explore the world through reading, and express yourself through writing.
Okay.
So it's really the foundation of communication.
Gotcha. So listening.
Yeah.
It's the base. It's the way we naturally absorb language, just like babies do.
Right.
Before they can even utter a word.
Yeah.
Immersing yourself is key.
Yeah.
But there's a bit more to it than that, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Think about how parents instinctively talk to their kids.
Oh, okay.
Simpler words, they slow down.
Right.
They emphasize key sounds.
Yeah.
Well, that same principle applies to learning any language.
Interesting.
Peppa Pig.
Peppa Pig.
Yeah, with its clear pronunciation and simple storylines.
Okay.
Is a surprisingly effective tool for tuning your ears to the rhythm and sounds of English.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I see how that simplified input can really help with picking up the basics.
Right.
But what about those of us who maybe aren't into cartoons?
Yeah.
How do we immerse ourselves effectively?
Subtitles are your secret weapon.
Ooh.
Start with your favorite shows.
Okay.
Friends, Stranger Things, anything that you enjoy.
Gotcha.
Watching with English subtitles lets you read and listen simultaneously,
Right.
reinforcing your comprehension.
Okay.
Then try watching the same scene without subtitles to test yourself.
So it's like training wheels for your ears.
Precisely.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and it ties into the idea of active listening.
Oh, okay.
which goes beyond just passively hearing the words.
Okay.
You're mimicking pronunciation,
Right.
paying attention to tone,
Yeah.
and truly engaging with the nuances of spoken English.
Active listening. I like that.
Yeah.
It feels a lot more deliberate and purposeful than just having the TV on in the background.
Right.
Okay, so we've got listening down.
Uh-huh.
But
Yeah.
speaking,
Yeah.
that's often the trickiest part, right?
Absolutely.
It's easy to feel self-conscious about making mistakes.
One technique that can help you overcome that fear and build confidence is shadowing.
Shadowing.
You listen to a sentence and you repeat it immediately, mimicking the speaker's tone and rhythm.
Oh, okay.
Want to try it?
Yeah.
Repeat after me.
Okay.
I'd like a cup of coffee, please.
I'd like a cup of coffee, please.
Hey, it's already making you think about your pronunciation more.
It is.
Yeah.
I like that.
And don't underestimate the power of everyday conversations,
Oh.
even if it's just talking to yourself.
Interesting.
Describe what you're doing as you go about your day.
Right.
I'm cooking dinner. I'm walking the dog.
Yeah.
Every little bit helps.
So it's about finding those little opportunities to practice speaking,
Precisely.
even if it feels a bit silly at first.
Exactly. And when it comes to speaking,
Yeah.
remember that learning sentence patterns
Okay.
is more effective than memorizing isolated words.
Interesting.
Let's revisit that coffee example.
All right.
Once you've got, I'd like a cup of coffee down,
Mm-hmm.
you can swap coffee for tea,
Right.
water,
Uh-huh.
a slice of cake.
Yeah.
Suddenly you've unlocked a flexible phrase for a variety of situations.
Okay, that's a really helpful way to think about it.
Yeah.
Instead of memorizing a whole dictionary,
Right.
you're learning the building blocks of sentences
Mm-hmm.
and how to adapt them.
Exactly.
So we've covered listening and speaking.
Yeah.
What about reading?
Reading is like a treasure trove for expanding your vocabulary, absorbing grammar naturally, and simply enjoying the learning process.
But I imagine it can be a bit overwhelming.
Ah.
Where do you even start?
It doesn't have to be intimidating.
Yeah.
Start with materials you genuinely enjoy.
Yeah.
Maybe news headlines,
Uh-huh.
a favorite blog,
Yeah.
even social media posts.
Okay.
The key is to find content that keeps you engaged
Right.
and coming back for more.
So instead of forcing myself to read classic literature that I don't understand,
Right.
I could start with something more my speed.
Exactly. And here's a tip.
Okay.
Don't get bogged down by every unfamiliar word.
Right.
Use context clues to guess the meaning.
Oh,
So
interesting.
for example,
Okay.
the restaurant was crowded,
Yeah.
so we decided to leave.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you don't know crowded, you can infer it means something uncomfortable
Oh, okay.
or undesirable because they left.
Right. That's a great point. I do that all the time when I'm reading in my native language.
Mm-hmm.
Why not apply to English as well?
Precisely, it's about activating those critical thinking skills and becoming an active reader,
Right.
not just passively skimming the words. You can also make reading more interactive by underlining new words, writing them down, and even creating your own sentences with them.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it's about turning reading into an active learning experience
Exactly.
rather than just passively absorbing information.
Yeah.
It's listening, speaking, and reading covered.
Mm-hmm.
What about writing?
Yeah.
I feel like that's the one a lot of people struggle with.
Writing is a fantastic way to organize your thoughts,
Okay.
refine your grammar,
Right.
and flex those creative muscles in English.
Yeah.
And the best part is you can start small.
Okay.
Think about writing simple sentences about your daily routine.
All right.
I wake up at 7 a.m.
All right.
I eat breakfast at 8 a.m.
Yeah.
You know, just those very basic things.
So it's not about writing the next great novel.
Exactly.
It's about getting comfortable expressing yourself in written English.
Precisely. And journaling in English is a great low-pressure practice.
Oh,
It's a private space to experiment with the language without fear of judgment.
right.
You can also leverage language exchange apps
Oh, yeah.
to get feedback from native speakers
Mm.
and learn from your mistakes.
I like that.
Yeah,
It's all about embracing those mistakes as opportunities to learn.
exactly.
Okay, so we've covered the 4 skills:
Uh-huh.
listening, speaking, reading, and writing.
Right.
They seem pretty interconnected, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Think of it like a web with each skill supporting and reinforcing the others.
Right.
When you listen, you're not just absorbing sounds.
Right.
You're also picking up on grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation.
Yeah.
When you speak,
Mm-hmm.
you're putting all of that knowledge into practice. And
Well,
when you read,
Yeah.
you're expanding your vocabulary,
Mm.
seeing how grammar works in different contexts, which then feeds into your writing.
It's just like this amazing cycle
Is.
of learning and reinforcement.
Absolutely.
The more you practice each skill, the stronger that web becomes.
Yeah.
Leading to greater fluency overall.
Right.
But how do we make sure we're actually practicing effectively?
That's where motivation and goal setting come in.
Okay, yeah.
Right.
Motivation and goal setting.
We'll dive into those crucial aspects in the next part of our deep dive.
Awesome. I'm excited to learn more about that.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay. It's fascinating how we often box in language learning as this rigid,
Right.
classroom-only activity.
Yeah.
But in reality, it's happening around us all the time.
That's so true. When you start seeing everyday moments
Yeah.
as learning opportunities,
Right.
it really does open up a whole new world.
Think about it. Every time you watch a movie,
Yeah.
listen to music, or even just glance at a menu,
Right.
you're engaging with English in some way.
It's like this constant stream of input, subtly shaping your understanding of the language.
And it doesn't have to be passive.
Okay.
You can turn those everyday encounters into active learning experiences.
Now that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
How do we make that happen?
Let's say you're watching a movie. Instead of just following the plot, pay attention to how the characters use certain phrases,
Right.
the tone they convey,
Yeah.
the rhythm of their speech.
So I'm not just watching for entertainment.
Right.
I'm actively analyzing how the language is being used.
Precisely. And you can apply the same principle to music.
Oh, okay.
Listen to the lyrics,
Yeah.
try to sing along, notice how the words are pronounced
Wow.
and how they flow together.
It's like training your ear
Exactly.
to pick up on those subtle nuances that make a language come alive.
Fluency isn't just about knowing grammar rules
Right.
or having a massive vocabulary. It's about using the language naturally and effortlessly like a native speaker,
Right. It's about feeling comfortable and confident.
expressing yourself no matter the situation.
And the more you expose yourself to the language
Yeah.
in these authentic contexts,
Right.
the more comfortable you'll become.
Okay. We've talked a lot about the individual skills,
Mm-hmm.
listening, speaking, reading, writing.
Right.
But how do they all work together to create that fluency we're aiming for?
That's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Think of it like a web,
Right?
with each skill interconnected and reinforcing the others.
So when I'm listening to English,
Yeah.
I'm not just absorbing sounds.
Right.
I'm also picking up on grammar,
Mm-hmm.
vocabulary, and pronunciation.
Exactly. And when you speak, you're putting all that knowledge into practice,
Right.
solidifying it in your mind.
And reading expands my vocabulary.
Yes.
Showing me how grammar is used in different contexts.
Which in turn informs your writing
Oh, okay.
as you begin to use those new words and structures in your own work.
It's a beautiful cycle
Absolutely.
of learning and reinforcement. And the more you engage in each of these skills,
Yeah.
the stronger those connections become, leading to greater fluency and overall mastery of the language.
It's like working out a muscle,
Yeah,
making it stronger and more resilient with each exercise.
precisely. And just like with any workout, consistency is key.
Okay.
Even dedicating a few minutes each day to each skill
Mm-hmm.
can make a huge difference over time.
So don't get discouraged if you don't see results overnight.
Right.
Language learning is a marathon, not a sprint.
And the journey itself is just as important as the destination.
I like that.
Enjoy the process.
Yeah.
Embrace the challenges and celebrate those small victories along the way. After all, there's something incredibly rewarding
Yeah.
about being able to communicate in another language.
It's true. Connecting with people from different cultures,
Absolutely.
expanding your horizons. Those are amazing benefits.
It opens up a whole world of possibilities,
Yeah.
both personally and professionally.
And who knows, maybe one day our listener will be hosting their own podcast in English.
That would be a testament to the power of consistent practice
Right.
and a positive mindset.
Okay, so we've covered the fundamentals of the 4 skills,
Yeah,
the importance of everyday learning, and the power of consistency.
right.
But there's one crucial piece we haven't touched on yet:
And that is,
motivation.
yes.
The fuel that keeps us going,
Uh-huh.
especially when things get tough.
Right.
And of course, setting realistic goals
Yeah.
so we don't get overwhelmed.
Ah, yes. Motivation and goal setting, the compass and map for our language learning journey.
I like that.
We'll dive into those critical aspects after a quick break. Stay tuned.
So we're back, ready to unpack the power of motivation
Yeah.
and goal setting in your English learning journey.
Right.
You know, we've all hit those walls
Yeah.
where the motivation takes a nosedive.
For sure.
How do we keep the fire burning?
What's fascinating here is that motivation isn't this
Okay.
magical thing that appears. It's something you actively cultivate and nurture.
Right.
It all starts with connecting to your why.
Your why.
Yeah.
Okay, so dig deep. Why are you learning English?
Right.
What doors will it open?
Yeah.
Is it to travel the world?
Mm-hmm.
Connect with new people?
Mm-hmm.
Boost your career?
Yeah.
Or simply enjoy those books and movies in their original form?
Having a strong why is like your secret weapon.
Oh, okay.
When doubt or frustration creep in,
Right.
it's easy to get caught up in the daily grind of studying and lose sight of the bigger picture.
So it's like having a North Star
Exactly.
guiding you even when the path gets a bit rocky.
Yeah.
Speaking of navigating that path, how about setting goals?
Right.
It's tempting to aim for fluency in a few months,
Yeah.
but isn't that setting yourself up for a crash landing?
Absolutely. Setting smaller, achievable goals is key to maintaining momentum and celebrating those wins along the way.
Yeah.
Instead of, I want to be fluent in 6 months,
Okay.
break it down. Maybe it's, I want to comfortably chat about my hobbies, or I want to read a short story without a dictionary.
Right. So those smaller victories fuel the motivation to keep going.
Exactly.
And it makes the whole process less intimidating.
For sure.
But even with smaller goals, we need to be honest about our time.
Exactly. How much time can you realistically dedicate to learning each week?
Right.
Be specific. Create a schedule that works for you and stick to it.
Okay.
Consistency trumps intensity when it comes to language learning.
So 30 minutes a day is better than cramming for 3 hours once a week.
Exactly.
It's like those little deposits in a savings account.
Right.
They add up over time.
That's a great analogy.
Thanks.
It's fascinating how much progress you can make with consistent effort, even if it's just a little bit each day.
Right.
And don't forget to celebrate those milestones.
Oh, okay.
Acknowledge your progress. Reward yourself.
Yeah.
Let those successes fuel your motivation.
It's like giving yourself a little pat on the back and saying, hey, I'm doing this.
Exactly.
I'm moving forward.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, it's important to remember that the journey of learning English is just as important as the destination.
Right.
Have fun with it.
Couldn't agree more. So
Okay.
there you have it.
Okay.
We've explored the 4 essential skills, the power of finding those everyday learning opportunities,
Right.
and the vital roles of motivation and goal setting.
Yeah.
You've now got the tools,
Okay.
the insights and inspiration to unlock your full language potential.
Awesome.
It's time to define your why, set those realistic goals, and get to work.
So to wrap things up, for anyone listening who wants to master English quickly and effectively, remember it all comes down to mastering those 4 key skills.
Right.
Listening, speaking, reading, and writing.
Yeah.
And as we've learned today, the best way to tackle these skills is to find a method that works for you. Stay motivated by connecting to your personal why. And don't forget to celebrate those small wins along the way.
Yeah, and remember, consistency is key.
Right.
Keep practicing, keep learning,
Absolutely.
and most importantly, have fun with it.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of English language learning.
It was my pleasure.
We'll catch you next time.
Sounds good.
Welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be tackling something you use every day, probably without even thinking about it too much.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Numbers and time.
Okay, interesting. And how are we diving into that?
Well, our roadmap for this deep dive is a 100-minute lesson plan.
100 minutes. That's pretty intense.
Well, don't worry. We're giving you the express tour.
Okay, that makes me feel better.
I mean, you might be thinking, I already know numbers. I know how to tell time. But, think about it this way. This deep dive is about the structure of how we learn these concepts.
Ooh, okay. I like that.
Like whether you're teaching these concepts to somebody else, or maybe you're learning a new language, or maybe you're just fascinated by those everyday things that we kind of take for granted.
Yeah, it's funny how the most basic things can actually be pretty complex when you really look at them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what I found really interesting about this lesson plan that we're looking at is how systematic it is.
Oh, interesting.
Like it starts with the most basic building blocks and then methodically adds complexity as it goes.
So it shows how our brains build up to a really sophisticated understanding, but from a simple starting point.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty cool. And it jumps right in with numbers. Okay, so 1, 2, 3.
Well, it actually starts with counting 1 to 20 first.
Okay, that does seem pretty basic.
Yeah. But does it really? I mean, I remember when I was a kid, getting the number order right was a big deal. Why does 7 come after 6?
It's funny because when you think about it, that decimal system that we use every day it really relies on understanding those first 10 digits, right? And then you build from there. And even across languages, a lot of languages have similar structures for those early numbers.
Oh, that's interesting.
So it's kind of a common starting point for communication no matter where you are in the world.
So it's sort of like a universal language in a way.
In a way, yeah. Like a Rosetta Stone for numbers.
I like that. But then English gets tricky, right? Like 13 versus 30.
Ugh, don't even get me started. I still mix those up sometimes.
I know. It's like, why does English have to be so complicated sometimes?
Well, and the lesson plan actually highlights those pronunciation pitfalls early on.
Ooh, that's sorry.
Like right from the beginning. It's like, okay, watch out for these. So after you get 1 to 20 down, then it moves on to like how do you build bigger numbers? Like all the way up to 99.
And that's where understanding place value becomes like really, really important. For
Place value. Right?
Yeah, like 21, 32, 45. It's all about seeing the pattern, how the tens and the ones like work together.
Oh, okay. So it's like you're cracking a code.
Exactly. It's like a number code.
So we've cracked the code up to 99.
We're on a roll.
But what about those giant numbers? Like, does it cover those too?
It does. So this lesson plan goes all the way up to 10,000.
Whoa.
Yeah. And it really emphasizes that logic of thousands, hundreds, tens, and ones.
Okay, so it's still building on that same foundation, even when you get to those really big numbers.
Exactly. It's all connected. And it even touches on Roman numerals, which I think is really fascinating.
Roman numerals, like IVX.
Yeah, because it shows how differently like ancient civilizations approached numbers.
Oh, that's cool. It's like a totally different way of thinking about it.
Right. It's like a whole other number system.
Yeah.
But let's get real for a second.
Yep.
How does this lesson plan actually help someone like use numbers in everyday life?
That's a good question. Like, it's great to know the theory, but how do you actually put it into practice?
Well, that's where it gets really practical. The lesson plan includes things like phone numbers, asking someone's age, talking about money.
Oh, okay. So like real world scenarios.
Exactly. Using phrases you'd actually encounter in daily conversations.
So it's kind of like a cheat sheet for real life conversations.
Exactly. And there's even a suggestion for a game of number bingo.
Bingo, like with numbers instead of letters.
Yeah. I mean, I love bingo, but do you think it actually helps with numbers? Or is it just like a fun activity?
Oh, I think games are fantastic for learning, especially for kids.
Oh, yeah.
Bingo can really help reinforce number recognition, the order of numbers.
And it's fun, so that's a bonus.
Exactly. Plus, a little friendly competition never hurt anyone.
Okay, so we've conquered the world of numbers.
At least up to 10,000.
But what about time? How does this lesson plan tackle that?
Crime is next, and the lesson plan starts by addressing the two main ways we see time: analog and digital clocks.
Yeah, those are like the two biggies.
Right, and making sure you're comfortable with both is really key because you encounter both in the real world.
It's funny, I'm so used to digital clocks now that I almost forget how to read an analog clock sometimes.
I know, right? It's like a lost art.
But the lesson plan uses those like classic phrases for telling time, like o'clock, quarter past, quarter to. But are those really universal? Like, do people in other countries say it the same way? That's a great question, and it actually brings up the like cultural aspect of time telling.
Interesting.
Like, those phrases are pretty common in a lot of English-speaking regions, but other cultures might have totally different ways of expressing those fractions of an hour.
So even something as basic as like quarter past isn't so straightforward.
Yeah, exactly. It really depends on where you are in the world and what language you're speaking.
Wow, I never thought about that before. So this lesson plan is making me realize there's a lot more to numbers and time than I initially thought.
It's like peeling back the layers of an onion.
And the lesson plan also really emphasizes using a real clock to practice telling time.
Oh yeah, that visual element is so important, especially if you're someone who learns best by seeing things.
So you can actually see the hands moving as you're saying the phrases.
Right. It helps solidify that connection between the like abstract idea of time and its physical representation.
So it's like you're making time tangible.
Exactly. You can actually see it happening.
That's pretty cool. And what I really appreciate about this lesson plan is how specific it is about like the actual phrases you would use for asking and telling time.
Oh yeah, it gives you the words.
Yeah, it's not just about understanding what time it is, it's about how to actually say it in conversation.
So it's like giving you the script for those everyday interactions.
Yeah, exactly. And that could be super helpful for someone learning English or even just someone who gets like tongue-tied asking for the time.
I know, right? It can be surprisingly tricky.
It's like suddenly you forget how to say the simplest things.
Exactly. And this lesson plan, it just takes away all that guesswork and helps you build confidence.
And just like with the number section, it also encourages role-playing to practice those time-telling skills.
Oh, that's great. So you're not just learning the words, you're actually using them.
It's like putting it all into action.
Exactly. Learning by doing.
So where does this deep dive go from here? We've covered numbers, we've tackled telling time. What's next?
Well, now it gets personal.
Ooh,
The lesson plan shifts its focus to how we use numbers and time in our own daily lives.
Okay, now that's something I can relate to. I mean, everyone has a routine, right?
Exactly. And that's where we'll pick up in part 2 of our deep dive.
That way.
Welcome back to the deep dive.
Glad to be back. So last time we were talking about how this lesson plan takes a really personal turn.
Yeah, it starts to focus on how we actually use numbers and time in our day-to-day life.
Like our routines.
Exactly. Waking up, going to work, bedtime, those everyday things.
Like they were reading my diary or something.
Right. But it's so smart how they incorporate the numbers and time telling we learned in the first part. It's not just about the concepts anymore. It's about applying them.
Oh, so they actually give you ways to practice.
Yeah, like they actually suggest students write out their daily routines.
Oh, interesting. So instead of just saying, I wake up at 7, you'd write.
I wake up at 7 o'clock, or I wake up at 7:15. Using those specific phrases.
Right. So it reinforces what you've learned, but it's also personalized.
Exactly. And it made me think, we talk about routines all the time, but do we ever really stop and analyze them?
Analyze them. How do you mean?
Well, how much of our day is really dictated by the clock versus how much is actually our own choice?
That's a good question. Never really thought about it that way.
But the lesson plan doesn't just stop at routines, does it?
Nope. It goes beyond those basic routines and gets into things like appointments and transportation schedules.
Oh, okay. Stuff that can get a little tricky if you're not really comfortable with numbers and time.
Right. Like imagine trying to catch a bus or make a doctor's appointment if you can't clearly communicate what time you need to be there.
Oh, yeah. That's when it stops being theoretical and starts being real life stress.
Exactly. And that's why this lesson plan is so helpful. It gives you those tools to feel confident and in control, even in situations where you might feel a little anxious.
Makes sense. But how do you actually know if someone's really grasped all this? Is there a test? Of course. There's another quiz, and this time it mixes numbers and time together.
Ooh, a combo quiz. That sounds like a good challenge. Though, sometimes I think I learn more from making up the questions than actually answering them.
Oh, I totally agree. When you have to come up with the questions, you have to think about the material in a whole different way.
Yeah, you have to anticipate what someone else might need to know, and that really helps you understand it better yourself.
So maybe we should encourage our listener to try making their own quizzes about numbers and time.
Ooh, I like that. Like a deep dive challenge for our listeners. But before we get too carried away with quiz making, let's step back for a second.
Okay.
What have we actually learned from this deep dive into the lesson plan so far?
Well, I think it shows that even with something as basic as numbers and time, there's real method to learning them.
Like a step-by-step process.
Yeah.
Right.
You start with the building blocks and then you layer on complexity, always making sure to connect back to how you'd actually use this stuff in real life.
It's like a reminder that learning should be both structured and meaningful.
Exactly. And I think it's interesting how interconnected everything is. We started with numbers, then time, then routines, and now these more complex scenarios.
It's like it all builds on itself.
Right. It's not just separate topics, it's all woven together.
And that's where we'll pick up in the final part of our deep dive.
We'll see how this lesson plan really pushes learners to become fluent and confident with numbers and time in any situation.
And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into numbers and time. It's amazing how much ground we've covered, right?
It really is. We started with something as simple as counting to 20, and now look at us.
It's all thanks to this amazing lesson plan. The last part, we were talking about how it gets into these more real-life situations.
Yeah, like going to appointments, figuring out travel schedules, the stuff that can be kind of stressful if you're not totally comfortable with the language.
Exactly. And it's here, in this final stretch, that the lesson plan really seems to emphasize, conversational fluency.
Oh, for sure. It's okay, you've got the basics. Now let's make sure you can actually use them in real life.
So you're not just understanding numbers and time, you're actually able to use them without even thinking about it.
Right, it becomes second nature.
So it's like taking all those building blocks that we've been working with and turning them into a fully functional communication system.
I like that, a communication system. It's about bridging that gap between what you know in your head and what you can actually do out in the world.
Exactly. And one of the ways this lesson plan does that is through a final quiz. We talked about quizzes before, and I know you're a big fan of making your own quizzes.
Oh yeah, always a good challenge.
But what's special about this final quiz in the lesson plan?
Well, it's designed to be more challenging than the previous ones. It brings together numbers and time in these more complex scenarios.
So it's not just what time is it?
No, it's more like, okay, if the train leaves at 4:15 and the journey takes 35 minutes, what time will you arrive? Stuff like that.
Ooh. Okay, that does sound a bit trickier.
It really makes you think, right? You have to do some calculations, put different pieces of information together.
And be able to explain your answer clearly.
Exactly. It's impressive considering this lesson plan started with basic counting.
It really is. But aside from quizzes, are there other ways the lesson plan encourages this real-world fluency?
Definitely. One of the last activities is a conversation practice where learners pair up and act out different scenarios.
Oh, fun.
It's like the grand finale. It brings everything together. Numbers, time, all the vocabulary they've learned.
Like they're finally performing on stage after weeks of rehearsals.
Exactly. And I bet it can be a bit nerve-wracking, putting yourself out there.
And also exciting, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
It's a safe space to make mistakes and learn from them. And the more you practice, the more natural it all becomes.
So it's really about going beyond just knowing the material. It's about developing those communication skills.
For sure. It's about giving learners the confidence to navigate everyday situations.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive.
I agree.
We've seen how a well-structured lesson plan can take you from basic counting all the way to feeling empowered to use numbers and time in your everyday life.
And it's a great reminder that learning should be both fun and effective. I mean, who knew a deep dive into a 100-minute lesson plan could be so interesting?
So to all our listeners out there, keep diving deep, keep exploring, and keep challenging yourselves to learn new things. Until next time.